Hey, I hope everyone's doing well and everyone had a happy holidays and has a happy New Year's in the next coming days. My name is Jake Burdett, and the reason I'm making this video is I wanted to publicly announce that I am running for Democratic Central Committee of Wicomico County. I've sort of been hinting at it on social media the last couple weeks, but now I'm officially coming out and announcing it. So, got a little business card to promote the candidacy and everything, so you all know it's official. Yeah, and feel free to add me on all that social media if you want to follow my posts, see what I'm saying. So, now that I've announced my candidacy, let me tell you a little bit about myself as a person. So, as I said earlier, my name is Jake Burdett. I'm 19 years old. The primary, which is when the Democratic Central Committee race is decided on June 26th. By that point, I will be 20, but I'll still be one of the youngest people ever elected into a political office if I do win. That is. Yeah, so I'm a Salisbury student here at Salisbury University, political science major. I went to Towson University my freshman year. I was an undecided major, and then I discovered that I wanted to work in politics, so I switched my major once I came to Salisbury. I'm originally from Howard County, but you know, most likely going to become a permanent resident of Wicomico County. I like it over here. Very nice people, and I want to make the community better, which is why I'm running. So I mentioned earlier that I'm a student at Salisbury. At Salisbury, I joined the College Democrats, so I'm also an active member of the College Democrats at Salisbury. And I also joined a local activist organization called the Lower Shore Progressive Caucus. Quickly became a leader in the caucus, and my job is I'm in charge of college outreach. So in terms of what I do for money, I got a little part time job for an organization called the Working Matters Coalition, and they're basically a coalition that it's a bunch of different pro workers' rights organizations that have come together and they support legislation in Maryland that's good for workers. And right now, my job with that coalition, the specific organization that I work with within the coalition is called United Workers, but yeah, there's like 160 total organizations in the coalition, I believe. It's a pretty big coalition. But what I do for them is I canvass and phone bank to get garner support for what's called the Healthy Working Families Act, HB1 for short, and it's a paid sick leave bill in Maryland. So that's what I do for money. Now that you know a little bit about me as a person, let me tell you a bit about myself as a candidate and what I stand for. So, probably my most important issue is getting money out of politics and ending corruption that's rampant in the system in both parties. And the way that you would do that is publicly funded elections. The way that it works now is candidates, obviously, if you want to run a campaign, you need money to do things that are associated with running a campaign, such as buying ads, hiring staff, and all that stuff. So you need money to run a campaign, and the way that it usually works is, who has more money to donate to a campaign? People like me who are just regular people who don't have that much money to donate, or a corporation or a billionaire or a millionaire. Of course, the corporations and the billionaires and millionaires have more money to donate, so those are the ones who do donate. And it's just human nature. If someone does something for you, you're going to do something in return. So what happens is these candidates take the donations from the billionaires and the corporations, and then once they get into office, they represent the rich and the corporations rather than the constituents who actually voted for them. So I sort of view the money in politics and corruption as the root of all evil in the system and the stem of all other issues and reasons why this country's screwed up. So that's my most important one, is getting money out of politics and ending corruption. Probably my next most important issue is getting single payer health care, Medicare for all. Many people call it free health care. It's not actually free, it's funded by tax dollars, of course. But I think that's important because the U.S. is pretty much the only modern industrialized Western nation that does not give healthcare as a human right. I think it should be a human right. I mean, why wouldn't it be a human right? We're talking about people's health after all. So, a common argument against that is that it's too expensive, but it actually saves money because the way we currently do it, having healthcare be a commodity, well, it we treat it as a commodity, but it's really a necessity. So people need healthcare, so they're willing to pay practically anything for it. So health insurance companies charge as much as they can when the state could do it for much cheaper. It Our current system over the next 10 years would cost $48 trillion. A single payer system over the next 10 years would cost $32 trillion. So single payer not only would cover everyone, but it would also save us a lot of money. So that's my next biggest issue. I consider it non-negotiable. If a candidate does not support single payer healthcare, I will not vote for them. So another big issue for me, considering I am myself a college student, is I think we should have tuition-free public college, free community college, and also free trade schools. Because again, while they aren't necessities like a food is a necessity, they are a necessity practically if you want to live a higher quality of life. And it's unfair to only have that option available to people who already have money. I view it as sort of, if it costs money to go to college and you need to go to college to get a good paying job, I view it as sort of a closed loop where it makes it really hard to escape from poverty because you'll never have the money to be able to afford to go to college and rise out of poverty. It's a bit of a catch-22. So that's another big one for me. Um, Another big one is moving towards green technology and sustainable technology like wind, solar, nuclear power, all that stuff. Get away from fossil fuels and coal and oil and all that because we only have one world. Um, if we destroy it, then we have nowhere to go. Humanity is screwed, essentially. So I don't know why this is a debatable issue. So that's another big one. One thing I was in support of was the wind farm that they wanted to have in Ocean City. It's just good for the environment and creates energy. And another underlooked aspect of moving towards green technology is to create the green technology, you need to create jobs in order to do that. So the wind turbine farm in Ocean City actually would have created nearly 10,000 jobs. So that's another reason to support green technologies. It's a jobs program. So speaking of jobs programs, that brings me to my next issue, which is I want to do a New Deal, like FDR's New Deal. Our infrastructure is crumbling across the country. The American Society of Civil Engineers ranks the U.S. infrastructure as a D plus, and we're supposedly first world nation. So that's a little ridiculous to me that our infrastructure is in that poor shape. It shows you what the people in power prioritize. They don't prioritize, giving services that most people actually use, such as, reinvesting in the highways and the waterways. Everyone is already aware of how poor the water is in Flint. What everyone is not aware of is that there are actually 3,000 cities with even worse water levels than Flint. And in the richest country that has ever existed, I look at that as criminal that we don't take care of our citizens. We treat them as if this is a third world nation. So, infrastructure rebuild through a New Deal program, which again would create thousands of jobs. So that's another big thing I'm in support of. Another one, this is a more of a local issue, although there are Confederate monuments all across the country. But I want to remove Confederate monuments off of public property because I think it's a little ridiculous that you have black citizens funding these Confederate monuments of people who fought to enslave their ancestors. I look at that as a spit in the face to black people in this country. And even if you're not black, I'm white, I still don't want my money going to glorifying these Confederate soldiers who were traitors and fought for slavery. So there's actually a General Winder sign in front of the Wicomico County Courthouse. General Winder, even during his own time, he was notorious. He committed war crimes. He ran. He was in charge of running the Unions or the Confederacy's prison camps. So they would get captured Northern soldiers, put them in the prison camps, and he essentially ran them like a concentration camp. Yet we have a Confederate monument. We have a monument for this guy placed in front of the county courthouse where black people were lynched as recently as the 1930s. In that same spot is where the Confederate plaque was placed. So I'm against Confederate monuments on public property. So that's another big one for me. Another one is getting a living wage. I think if you work a 40-hour-a-week job, you should make enough to provide a bare necessity living for yourself. I think that's just common sense. That was why a minimum wage was created in the first place, was to be a living wage. It's not that anymore, but I think we need to get back to that. And, a lot of people really fight for this fight for 15 thing, and I'm a fan of the fight for 15, but I prefer a living wage because the cost of living in a state like Maryland is very different than the cost of living in a state like New York. I think the living wage should it changes from state to state. So I don't think I sort of disagree with just having this 15 number in every place when every place is different. Every state economy is different. So I'm in support of a living wage that varies from state to state. But more importantly, whatever the living wage in Maryland would be is what it should be. So, or is whatever the living wage in Maryland is what the minimum wage in Maryland should be. It should be tied to the living wage. So, another. I'm surprised I didn't bring this up earlier because this is another huge one for me. Is ending income inequality in general. The top 1%, the richest 1% in the U.S. has a third of the U.S.'s wealth. Now, do you really think that 1% just worked that much harder than the rest of us? Or do you think that the system is rigged in their favor, making it easier for the rich to get richer and harder for the poor to get richer? It makes it so the poor stay poor. So, that's from a U.S. perspective, but even on a more global perspective, the richest 8 people in the world own more wealth than the bottom 50% of the world population combined. So 8 people have more wealth than 3.5 billion people put together. Do you really think that they worked that much harder? No, of course not. So ending income inequality, both in Wicomico County, in the U.S. in general, and also in the world. So another thing I'm in support of is ending U.S. imperialism. We're currently in. It's hard to even keep track at this point. I think it's 8 interventions: Iraq, Syria, Pakistan, Yemen, Libya, Niger. I can't even name them all, but it's 8 countries. So we have no purpose being in those countries. It's not in interest of national security. If we really cared about human rights as we say we do, then why are we aiding 73% of dictatorships around the world? It's because the U.S. doesn't actually value human rights and democracy. That's just an excuse. Really, it's all the military-industrial complex profiting off of war. That's the reason why we invade these countries, also for natural resources, and also to install puppet dictators who will bend to the will of U.S. interests. So, I want to end all of that. Also, people like to say, back to my free college thing earlier, oh, we don't have the money for free college. Well, for tuition-free public college, it would cost the U.S. about $80 billion a year. And the U.S. annual military budget under Barack Obama was $620 billion. Just this year, they increased it under Trump to $700 billion. So, in case you can't do the math, that was an $80 billion increase in the annual military budget. And how much did it cost again for free college? $80 billion. Yet they say we don't have enough money for free college when it costs exactly the same amount as the increase alone to the annual military budget. So clearly we do have the money, and they just don't want to spend the money on that. they don't want to take care of their people. They would rather spend it on, you know, devastating countries in the Middle East. So yeah, ending U.S. imperialism is a big one. Also, police system and justice reform. Actually, hold police accountable when they shoot unarmed black people, or just, and like whenever they do police brutality against anyone, whether they be black or whatever race, hold them accountable. I believe it's a two-tier justice system right now, where cops are not held to the same standard that just normal people like you or I are. I think we need to end that. I think we need to demilitarize the police. I think we need to get permanent body cams on police so that their actions are always recorded. Yeah, so police and justice system reform. I am, obviously, if I'm a Democrat, I'm pro choice. Won't say much more on that. But, and another big thing is I want to actually hold Wall Street accountable. They did mass fraud in 2008 or 2007 and caused the Great Recession. They bankrupted their entire companies by doing fraud, and then which ended up crashing the global economy. And yet, instead of being sent to jail for the mass fraud that they committed, they're bailed out and then given hundreds of $millions in bonuses. So, because that's what happens when you're rich in this country, you're allowed to get away with crime. But if you're poor and you do a crime, they'll lock you up and throw away the key. So I want to end that. Another big one is I want to get ranked choice voting installed, I should say. Ranked choice voting, that would make it much easier for third parties to become a viable option. We could escape the duopoly of the two-party system that we currently have. And when it comes to gun reform, I would say I am in support of gun reform, but I'm not an extremist that wants to like take away all guns or anything like that. I'm just for common sense gun reform, such as universal background checks to make sure that the people who get guns are trustworthy with them. So universal background checks, bans on high capacity magazines, stuff like that. Nothing too crazy. Just common sense stuff. So you're probably thinking after you and there are many other things I also support, but I don't want to make this video too long. Those are a bunch of my main issues. So another thing, you're probably thinking that sounds very similar to Bernie Sanders' agenda, and that's because I'm a huge Bernie Sanders supporter. He's the one who got me interested in politics, and I very much align with social democratic policies that you see in Scandinavian countries. And you're also probably asking, well, Jake, there aren't many Democrats who come out in support of all these policies that you're saying you support. So why are you running for Democratic Central Committee? Well, although I'm running for Democratic Central Committee, it's not like I love the Democrats. In fact, I have many problems with the Democrats. Not as many problems as I have with the Republicans, but I still have many problems with the Democrats, and I want to change them from within because I view the system as pretty much rigged against third parties. So if you want to change the system, you pretty much have to choose whichever party you agree with the most. And for me, that's the Democratic Party. So I'd like to change the party from within, make it a more progressive party that's more representative of, just average Americans, and not make the Democratic Party the elitist social club for rich people that it is today. So, yeah, that's that for as far as my candidacy goes. Another announcement I'd like to make is this video will be posted on my YouTube channel, and I am going to start regularly making YouTube videos just giving commentary about whatever's on my mind that day in terms of politics and society, and the reason I think the YouTube channel is a good idea is I feel like I don't really know my representatives at all. I know nothing about them, what they stand for. Maybe they'll give a few public announcements here and there, but it always seems fake to me. And when it's just confined to a Facebook post, it's just a paragraph. There's not much nuance that can go into it. So with a video, you can really explain what you mean in depth. So I'll be making videos pretty regularly, just so you guys can get to know me a little bit better and also know what I stand for. I'll also probably be explaining difficult concepts that that most your average American doesn't understand. I'll try to explain those in a simple way in layman's terms so that even people who don't really know much about politics can understand them. Um, Maybe I'll even do a couple of interviews with people from here and there. I don't really know where the channel is going to go, but thank you all for watching the video. I hope you subscribe. I will have all of my social media stuff posted in the description below. It's also right there if you need it. And like I said at the beginning, have a happy New Year's. Thanks for watching. Take care, everyone.